During Christmas dinner, my dad announced, "We're selling the house. Your sister needs the money for her startup." I asked, "What about the $40,000 I put into renovations?" My mom laughed. "Consider it rent for all those years." I just smiled, pulled out my phone, and showed them the lien I'd filed that morning. Their faces went white when they realized they couldn't sell without my permission. I, 32M, never thought Christmas dinner would be the day my family showed their true colors. The turkey was still warm on the table when my dad dropped the bomb that would change everything between us forever. The smell of pine from our Christmas tree mixed with the aroma of Mom's famous stuffing as we sat around the dining room table I'd helped refinish just 2 years ago. My sister sat across from me, fidgeting with her phone while picking at her mashed potatoes. She'd been acting strange all evening, avoiding eye contact and giving short answers to my questions about her latest business venture. Dad cleared his throat in that way he always did before making important announcements. He told us he and Mom had been discussing their retirement plans and had made a decision about the house. My stomach dropped before he even finished the sentence. They were selling the family home because my sister needed capital for her startup. I felt the blood drain from my face as I processed what he'd just said. This wasn't just any house to me. I'd spent the last 5 years pouring my heart, soul, and savings into renovating this place. Every weekend for months, I'd been here laying hardwood floors, updating the electrical system, renovating both bathrooms, and completely modernizing the kitchen. The granite countertops we were eating on, I'd installed those myself after working 60-hour weeks to afford them. I asked them what would happen to the $40,000 I'd invested in renovations. The number felt heavy in my mouth as I said it. $40,000 of my hard-earned money, not to mention countless hours of labor and the emotional investment of preserving our family home. Mom's reaction hit me like a slap across the face. She actually laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, but a full, dismissive laugh that echoed through the dining room. She told me to consider it rent for all the years I'd lived there growing up, as if the money I'd spent as an adult improving their property was somehow payment for my childhood bedroom. My sister finally looked up from her phone, and I could see she'd known this was coming. There was guilt in her eyes, but also entitlement. She started explaining how her tech startup was going to revolutionize social media marketing and how this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She needed $200,000 to get off the ground, and the house was their biggest asset. I sat there for a moment, letting their words sink in. The betrayal was complete. Not only were they selling the house I'd invested in without consulting me, but they were dismissing my financial contribution as if it meant nothing. My sister would get her startup money, and I'd get nothing but the memory of all those weekends spent making their house beautiful. But here's the thing they didn't know about me. I'm not just handy with tools. I'm also pretty good with legal research. 3 months earlier, when I'd started noticing some tension between my parents and sister during family dinners, I'd gotten suspicious. My sister had been dropping hints about needing money, and my parents had been having hushed conversations that stopped whenever I entered the room. I'd started to worry they might try to sell the house without considering my investment. So I'd done something I'd never told them about. I'd consulted with a lawyer about my options. Turns out, when you make substantial improvements to someone else's property with their knowledge and consent, you have certain rights. The lawyer had helped me file a mechanic's lien against the property that morning, just hours before Christmas dinner. I smiled at my family and calmly pulled out my phone. I opened the PDF of the lien document and turned the screen toward them. I explained that I'd filed a legal claim against the property for the full amount of my renovations, plus interest and legal fees. The change in the room was immediate and dramatic. Dad's face went from confused to pale white in seconds. Mom stopped laughing and leaned forward to look at my phone screen. My sister's mouth fell open as she realized what this meant. I explained that the lien meant they couldn't sell the house without either paying me back or getting my written consent to release the claim. The $40,000 they'd dismissed as rent was now a legal debt that had to be settled before any sale could proceed. Dad started sputtering about how I couldn't do this to family. He said I was being vindictive and that I should want to help my sister succeed. But his voice shook as he said it, and I could see the panic in his eyes as he realized their plans had just crumbled. Mom demanded to know when I'd filed the lien and why I hadn't told them. I explained that I'd done it that very morning, after weeks of sensing something was wrong. I'd hoped I wouldn't need to use it, but their announcement had proved my instincts right. My sister finally found her voice and asked if I was really going to destroy her dreams over money. I looked at her across the table and told her I wasn't destroying anything. I was simply protecting my investment, just like she was trying to protect hers. The rest of dinner was eaten in tense silence. The Christmas music playing softly in the background felt mocking now, all joy sucked out of the room by the reality of what had just happened. My parents kept exchanging worried glances, and my sister stared at her plate like it held the answers to her problems. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside and asked what it would take for me to release the lien. His tone was different now, respectful in a way it hadn't been earlier. I told him it was simple. Either pay me back the $40,000 plus the legal fees I'd incurred, or give me an ownership stake in the house proportional to my investment. He tried to negotiate, suggesting maybe they could pay me back over time or give me a smaller amount. But I learned my lesson about trusting family promises. I told him the terms weren't negotiable. Cash payment or ownership stake, those were his options. Over the next few days, my phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from family members. My sister alternated between angry messages about how I was ruining her life and pleading ones about how much this opportunity meant to her. My parents tried everything from guilt trips about family loyalty to threats about cutting me out of their will. But I held firm. I'd spent years being the reliable son, the one who showed up to help with home repairs and family emergencies. I'd invested my money and time into their property because I thought we were a team. Their willingness to dismiss my contribution so casually had shown me exactly where I stood in their priorities. Update 1. 2 weeks after Christmas, my parents called a family meeting. They'd been consulting with their own lawyer and had confirmed that my lien was legitimate and enforceable. The house couldn't be sold without resolving my claim first. Dad looked like he'd aged years in those 2 weeks. He admitted they didn't have $40,000 in liquid assets to pay me back. Most of their savings were tied up in retirement accounts they couldn't access without penalties. He asked if I'd be willing to accept a payment plan. I told him I'd consider it, but only with proper legal documentation and interest. I wasn't going to rely on handshake agreements anymore. If they wanted to pay over time, we'd need a formal loan agreement with collateral. My sister had been quiet during most of the meeting, but finally spoke up. She said she'd found other investors for her startup and didn't need the house money anymore. It was obvious she was lying. Her body language was all wrong, and she couldn't meet my eyes when she said it. Mom suggested we could all just forget about the lien and go back to how things were before. She said family was more important than money and that we were letting greed tear us apart. I reminded her that she'd been the one laughing about my $40,000 just 2 weeks earlier. The meeting ended without resolution. My parents needed time to figure out their finances, and I needed time to decide if I even wanted to maintain a relationship with people who'd shown such little respect for my contributions. Update 2. A month later, I got a call from a real estate agent. My parents had apparently tried to list the house anyway, hoping the lien wouldn't be discovered during the initial marketing phase. The agent had done a title search and found my claim, which stopped the sale process immediately. I called my dad and asked him what he thought he was doing. He claimed it was just to see what the house might be worth, but I knew better. They were hoping to find a buyer and then pressure me to release the lien at the last minute. This attempt to go around me was the final straw. I contacted my lawyer and asked him to send a formal notice to my parents and any real estate agents they might work with. The notice made it clear that any attempt to sell the property without resolving my lien would result in additional legal action. My sister called me that night, crying. She admitted that her startup had fallen through and that she desperately needed money. She'd been lying about finding other investors because she was embarrassed about the failure. She begged me to release the lien so they could sell the house and help her get back on her feet. I felt bad for her, but I also realized this was exactly why I'd been right to protect myself. My family's financial problems weren't my responsibility to solve, especially not after they tried to solve them at my expense. Update 3. 3 months after Christmas, my parents finally came to me with a proposal. They'd refinanced their retirement accounts and could pay me $30,000 immediately. They wanted me to accept this as full payment and release the lien. I considered it carefully. $30,000 was better than nothing, and continuing the legal battle was costing me money and emotional energy. But it was still $10,000 short of what they owed me, not counting the legal fees and interest that had accumulated. I made a counteroffer. I'd accept $35,000 and they'd pay my legal fees, which had reached about $3,000. In exchange, I'd release the lien and they could do whatever they wanted with the house. They agreed, and we completed the transaction through our lawyers. I received a cashier's check for $38,000, and they received a lien release document that cleared the way for them to sell their house. The house sold 2 months later for $420,000. My parents netted about $380,000 after fees and commissions. My sister got her startup money after all, though I heard through family gossip that her second business venture also failed within 6 months. I used my settlement money as a down payment on my own house. It's smaller than my parents' place, but it's mine. Every improvement I make benefits me directly, and I don't have to worry about family members dismissing my investments as rent. The relationship with my family never fully recovered. We're polite at family gatherings, but the trust is gone. My parents learned that I won't be taken advantage of, and I learned that family loyalty has to go both ways. My sister and I barely speak now. She blames me for the failure of her startup, even though her business plan was flawed from the beginning. She tells other family members that I chose money over family, but I know the truth. I chose self-respect over being a doormat. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just let them sell the house and walked away from my investment. It would have been easier and less painful for everyone involved. But then I remember my mom's laugh when I asked about my $40,000, and I know I made the right choice. The lien taught my family a valuable lesson about respect and consequences. It taught me an even more valuable lesson about protecting myself, even from the people I love most. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most likely to take advantage of your generosity, and you have to be prepared to stand up for yourself when they do. I don't regret filing that lien. It was the smartest thing I ever did, and it saved me from being financially and emotionally manipulated by my own family. The $40,000 was never really about the money. It was about respect, and sometimes you have to fight for that, even at the Christmas dinner table.